Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week. Let's go ahead and jump into those questions. Jason, what do we got?
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York writes in, if I stream a video to YouTube in 720p, can I convert that to 1080p in post? I'm a little nervous about venue internet, even with being hardwired.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, there's another way that you could bounce that video off first. First, I would try to get it to 1080 if there's a way that you can go to H.265. So if there's a way that you can go to like Restream or something or some other service and then get it lower bandwidth, because remember H.265 is half the bandwidth. So instead of dropping down physically in pixels down, you can get your 1080 still, but it's like having your cake and eating it too. You're just basically getting a more efficient way of getting those pixels up there. Now, if you do have this issue where, and I had this same thing where I had this footage here that I just ran through Topaz, and these lines on this car are just amazing because this was shot in 720, and when we streamed it, it was low resolution at 720, but I just upscaled it in Topaz. This is like $200 software, $300 software. But as we get into like this guy's shirt, it's hard to see because I'm using Splashtop into a different machine. But these lines on the 720 footage were just falling apart. They were pretty gone. And so being able to see Topaz recover this stuff, it's fascinating. And there's a 14-day trial period. So if you want to just run through a test, go through the entire infrastructure where you say 720 up to YouTube, suck it back down. You could use something like Downy to pull it back down, and then run that through Photo or Topaz Video AI and see how it does. And there's a couple different settings. They have like 5 different AI strengths where you can go through, and presets where you can go through and adjust those to recover and make it look what it thinks, because sometimes it's a little aggressive. So you just got to be careful with what preset that you use, because it might make people have 6 fingers or something like that. So just be careful with it.
Yeah, I use Topaz Video a lot, and it will give you an option to upscale. And from 720 to 1080, it probably will do a pretty good job. It's not the same as capturing at 1080, but it is. It can do a lot. You can usually with Topaz go up to like 4x. Once you start getting there, it's starting to make up a lot of things, and sometimes it works. If things aren't moving very much, it figures out it does it pretty well. So it also depends on the footage. What I found with both retiming and as well as scaling up, high motion and blurriness and things changing radically is where Topaz doesn't do as well. When things are kind of moving along at a relatively even pace, it does a pretty good job at upscaling. I do like the direction you're going, Zach, in the idea that good pixels are better than more pixels, and so you are better off, in my opinion, if your bandwidth is constrained, is to look at a lower resolution to make sure that those pixels are going out well. Just remember that 720 typically comes with 60 frames a second. There's not a lot of 30. Now you can take the 60 frames a second from your cameras if you're doing it and go down to 720p 30. Just remember that you have a different shutter speed there. So if the cameras are actually working at 720, and a lot of cameras don't even do 720 anymore, that's something to think about. Now, if your pipeline is 1080p and you're streaming 720, really think about something that you can use to record. You're there. You're not streaming. Something's not streaming. Look for a device, even one of the little devices that Courtney has shown in the past. It's HDMI in and does H.264 records at 1080p might be better than trying to upscale a 720p later that went to YouTube and was transcoded and had a whole bunch of other things going on. So even a $30 or $40 solution, and there's lots of them once you get into a couple $100 of things that can record a 1080p stream, it's a 1080p record locally. Camera, some of the Blackmagic assists, even used ones, will get you that 1080p even at ProRes if you're trying to record something locally. Generally, what we're doing is we're recording locally at a resolution that's typically twice what we're streaming oftentimes. So a lot of times we're streaming at 1080p, we're recording at 2160. So those are the kind of things that's the direction that we go on that area. So really look at how you can record locally before you try to upscale 720 to 1080p. It could work. So the answer is yes, but you might want to try to find a local solution. Next question.
Simon Ray in Midlands, UK writes in, is there a remote control with physical buttons that works with HomeKit so that you can quickly change lights and scenes when moving between rooms without having to navigate to the right icon on a phone?
Go ahead, Jason.
SwitchBot does this pretty well. There are a few little caveats, and it doesn't do everything, and it's not perfect. But there is a universal remote, and it does fairly well if you configure it correctly.
Harshid?
For HomeKit purposes, I was going to say Philips Hue has a remote control. Specifically, I'm not sure if it would change to a specific scene, but I haven't tried that personally. So I know that it had 5 buttons or 4 buttons that the top and bottom were like to turn on and off, and then the middle 2 could be programmed. So Philips Hue does offer the Apple Kit, HomeKit aspect to it, so maybe that might be a good decision. And then Guy Cochran also in the past has mentioned cache remote or something like that. Maybe he has some insight.
Nope. No insight. Okay, next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida writes in, would you find a small Elgato monitor useful? See the short here, and he includes a YouTube link.
Go, Bill.
Well, so he made a request of Elgato, essentially, that they allow the breaking apart of their kind of one-piece prompter thing. And I don't know if you've seen that, but it's kind of an all-in-one thing that doesn't come apart. And my answer is, they designed this to be a simplified, just put it up and use it thing. If you want to do the other thing, there are plenty of manufacturers that do small prompters in that class that you can put your own panel with, which essentially gets you what I think he was looking for. Here's one from B&H. It's a small rig. So there's lots of these kind of personal size prompter configurations, and then you buy one of the Lilliputs or other small ones, and you can put together your own ring that has the flexibility of what you're looking for. I'm not sure. I guess what I'm saying is I'm not sure there's anything in the Elgato solution that is different than going with the 2-piece solution that's kind of custom built. The promise of it is it's all in one. It just works. You plug it in. It's simple to use. So people looking for that, that's what you're going to get when you pay for it. My 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree with Bill. I don't know why you would tear your teleprompter apart to get a small monitor. There's so many options when you open it. Just go to Amazon and you're going to see literally 100 at the same size that you can get that have they're built for it. They've got 1/4-20s on the sides and on the tops, and they take all kinds of other inputs. I don't understand why. I mean, I think that I think for certain people the prompter works great, and I think my problem is I need something that has HDMI in. But if you don't need that, I think that the prompter is a good solution for a specific vertical in this market. Tearing it apart doesn't make any sense to me. Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York asks a follow-up to my previous question. Could I record 1080 and stream in 720 on my Mac Mini M2 using OBS 30?
I don't know. I don't know if you could do it OBS. I don't really use OBS on a Mac. I can tell you on Mimo Live, I absolutely do it all the time. In Mimo Live, I do the show, and this is on a Studio, which is technically slower than the new Mac. Oh, the Mac Mini M2 might be about the same. So I record the program and both ISOs for gray matter when we record it that way, and it's at 45% to do all 3 of those at 1080p. So the computer is capable of doing it. Whether OBS is capable of doing it, I don't know. My guess is it probably could pull it off, but again, OBS on the Mac I don't think is as stable as some of the other options. Next question.
Funsok Dorje writes in, greetings panelists, asking for a friend. How can I soundproof a small room 14 by 12 feet for recording and sound editing without breaking the bank? The room is in a small village. Thanks.
Go, Bill.
The most interesting thing is when you say it's in a small village, because whenever I think about it, you ask specifically about soundproofing, first of all, which is a tougher thing than sound treatment. We talk about both here all the time. Proofing means that when you're inside the room, you don't want to hear any distractions from outside. That's pretty easy with mid-range and upper mid-range stuff, but low frequencies are a monster to keep out. So if you're anywhere near traffic or rumbles, if you have thunderstorms that come by, keeping that out of a recording environment is incredibly difficult. You really have to do something with a lot of mass to impenetrable barriers that have a lot of mass, concrete block or things like that is where I think of first for construction when you're doing that kind of thing. lightweight stuff generally doesn't keep that low frequency energy out. In terms of treatment and things like that, you say you're in a village, so the sound profile may not be too bad outside. It could be bad. I don't know whether, in a village, I don't know whether you've got anything going by that, whether you've got a river nearby or whether it rains a lot. Those are going to be your big problems with soundproofing an interior space. I'd really, to give you more advice than those are your big problems, I'd have to really actually look at the actual venue and say, look at these things and see if you can fix these things specifically.
Yeah, my request for you, Flintstock, would be is to go to that, take a bunch of pictures of that, or walk around inside of it, and then put a mic there for just a little bit when you think it's the noisiest, and take a little bit of the exterior, just a little movie of the exterior, walk in, hang out a little bit, and post that somewhere, maybe on YouTube as an unlisted link or something like that, and then post a question with it so that we can see what you're talking about. I agree with Bill. If it's got a metal roof, that's going to be a thing. There's metal roofs are hard to. There are ways to solve it. There are these spring mechanisms that they use them for planting to create mass, and I've seen people put them on the roof. I've seen people actually. There's a bunch of problems with this, but I've seen people actually grow grass on their roof to get rid of the banging of it. They literally they coated it, and then they put 3 inches of soil, and then they put grass on it to keep it there, and it looks awesome, and it is super quiet. So anyway, I was like, that's a lot of weight to put on the top of your roof. And anyway, so there's a bunch of different things that you could do to get rid of that, but that's one of your biggest problems. Mass is something that can help. So being able to put things that are heavy on those things is going to help some. But again, depending on how many windows you have, depending on what kind of sound is going on outside, it can be very, very challenging to get rid of all of the sounds that are around you in that environment. Next question.
Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas writes in, OpenAI finally releases Sora 1080p 20 seconds and $200 a month. Will you try it? And he includes the link.
I feel like I have to try it, just to know, I may spend it. What we may do is get it. I may get it, and we'll all sit around in after hours and do things in Sora or something. We got to use it. We got to use it all up. I don't know how much $200 buys you, if it's unlimited or whether it's, you get X number of minutes or something like that. So I'm fascinated by it. I feel like as a tech person, I need to know what it does. I don't know if I would keep that kind of subscription at $200 a month unless I really knew what I was going to do with it. I think it's really aimed at keeping yahoos out and just having the people who are working in the industry using it for the things that they want to do or conceptualize, and the people who can afford it. And I will say that what you're going to see is probably a boom of the people willing to pay for it that are social influencers that can pay the $200 a month, and then they're going to post stuff on Twitter and Facebook and go, look at how cool this thing is. And that's probably part of the intention. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, based on his question, Paul says 1080p, 20 seconds and $200 a month. I wonder if that's $200 a month and you only get 20 seconds of video.
No, I think that's the clip. That's the clip size.
Okay. So you can work on up to 20-second clip, and then string them together. Okay.
Yeah. So
those are the kind of questions I'd have.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll see. We'll see what we can do as far as figuring that out. I think that it's really interesting. I still think that people are overselling AI video. So I think that people think, okay, this is going to be the future of everything, and everyone's going to make movies with it. But it's hard for humans to do a good movie. Look at how many tent poles we have in this year. I think there's maybe 5. What we call tent poles. These are big budget, semi-big revenue, even though a lot of them are even the big budget ones. So Red One, Gladiator. It's unclear whether Gladiator will break even. Red One will not.
Wow.
Because you got to remember the multiplier typically is 2.5%. No, 2.5 times. So when you take the global gross revenue, 2.5 times is they have to make that to get it back, and that's. Most people I talk to would say it's more like 3x. So you multiply everything by 3 and you get a sense. So if you've got a $150 million budget it's got to make $450 million on the way out to start breaking even, or $200 million, which I think is Gladiator. It's got to make $600 million to break even. And I think that it's going to have a hard time. And so you have maybe 5. It used to be 10 to 12. So that used to be, there was somewhere between 10 and 12 were kind of what you expect for and then that kind of pays for everything else. And then you have a couple that you didn't expect. There were $10 million movies that made $150 million, that kind of thing. But the big ones that generated all that revenue were typically 10 to 12. We're now down to 5 or 6. That's a big problem, and the reason I bring that up is that we're having trouble doing that. And look at how many shows are on streaming that aren't watchable, in my opinion. And that's with humans writing it, with humans acting, with humans directing, with humans running everything. It's going to take a while for AI to become as compelling as the humans, and most of the humans can't do it. So I think that the AI taking over this is now. What I will say is that if you're looking, this is where, in the same sense that where Midjourney has done really well and other things, if you're looking for examples for your presentation, if you're looking for B cuts for some kind of documentary, maybe, depending on what kind of documentary you're doing, if you're looking for things for your classroom, if you're looking for things for social media, there's all kinds of opportunities for this AI to be useful. So it's not that it's not useful, but I think that I just want to keep on underlining that when people say this is the end of Hollywood, I'm waiting to see that happen. I'm not going to buy that house without doing an inspection. So next question.
Douglas Carmichael writes in, a UK singer recently recorded vocals in a Renault car for a commercial. Anyone have any experience recording or producing content in odd places?
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, if cars are in truth odd, I've done a bunch of it. I've probably done 30 or 40 commercials over the course of my careers in cars because it's the best mobile recording studio you can get. If you're in a far place, I used to carry my 416 around with me on travel trips, and if I had pickups to do for somebody, I could very seldom make my hotel room work as well as I could make my rental car work, particularly if I'd go out at 11 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock in the morning after the city was quieted down around me and just use it as a voice booth. So it's actually kind of decent for that kind of thing. I'm sure I've recorded in a lot of different places and a lot of different circumstances with mobile rigs. You just have to know what you're doing. Like anything else, you have to be able to assess the space and realize where can I put a microphone or where can I cobble together baffling of some sort that'll absorb the frequencies I don't want bouncing around a lot. And in that circumstance, you can get a decent space for a short period. The reason that we have voice booths and the reason that people who do this for a living build out studios is because you don't want it to be you want it not only to be good, but you want it to be comfortable. And probably that reason more than anything else is why I do most of my voiceover work now here. I couldn't for years, and I had to have my voice booth, but now the noise reduction, the background noise removal is so good algorithmically that I can put up a mic in a space like this that has a couple of little fans and things like that and still make it work really well for voiceover. We couldn't do that up until maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. So things are changing. It's getting better, but it's still what it is.
I always remember the behind the scenes of Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe sitting underneath he's underneath a blanket in a hotel room with a SM58 doing his voiceovers for Dirty Jobs. And just a reminder that you can do this anywhere. So I've done that a couple times, but that's been the long and the short. I think that's the most odd place is just hotels are actually really hard to do because there's just all these people around and things happening. And it's just it's much less controllable than you would think it would be. Of course, your questions drive this show. You can use Mukana to chat, ask questions. You can vote on those questions. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and jump into Mukana, ask your question, or you can vote on other people's questions, or you can just talk about the questions. So if you don't know how to get to Mukana, go to officehours.global/join and join, and you're going to get an email, and that's going to give you links to the Discord, to Mukana, to a lot of other things within a day or two, and then you can start asking those questions and voting on those questions. All right, let's go into the next one.
Coming in from the QR code, Paul Kovacs in Elkhart, Indiana asks, recording to an SSD from an extreme ISO switcher. For some reason now, whenever I dissolve to a full graphic, the video gets highly compressed and pixelated. We'll clear up a second later. Never did this before. Am I missing something, a setting somewhere?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, you're missing a hyperdeck. Yeah, that's what you're missing. I used to record to ATEMs, but after getting a bit a few times, I gave up. But if you want to go down this path, if you don't want to spend the money, check that your settings for the live stream are actually set at hyperdeck high. Hopefully, you're not using it as an encoder to actually stream, but that's where the dictation of that megabits per second for the program actually gets adjusted, is inside of the live stream setting. So if you have it on low, it's going to be like a 5 megabit program file. So your ISO, your program ISO is dictated by the megabits per second of your live stream. Now, you can rebuild your show in Resolve. So if you record ISO every single one of the camera feeds, then if you have a fast enough SSD, that's the other part of this, is you need a qualified SSD. Otherwise, it will dash down to something that might fall apart like what you're describing. So you'll want to examine rebuilding the whole thing. So you suck the whole show into the Resolve, rebuild it, and when you render it, all those graphics will come out perfectly clean. So that's your other option, or just get a hyperdeck. And that way you're guaranteed that it's going to work. Where the ATEM, it's like a 99. Well, not even that. Your results may vary. I can't guarantee. May the force be with you on that one.
Yeah, crossfades are one of the hardest things we always tell people to be very careful when they're doing live streams, for instance, with crossfades, because crossfades are one of the hardest things to encode, because it's all the pixels are changing all at one time, and they're doing it slowly. So what happens is there's a set of keyframes, and then those keyframes are, every second, every 2 seconds, every 5 seconds, whatever that is. And those are the whole frames, and everything else is partial frames. And when you do a crossfade, you're slowly moving across between those keyframes, and the algorithms oftentimes are not built for that. So you end up with the pixelation that you're seeing there, because you're hitting the top of its spatial compression, and then the next thing the top of the temporal compression, and the next thing it hits is the spatial compression, because it doesn't have enough room to, it doesn't have any room to go, and that's what you're seeing there. So I think that for straight cuts and for doing the kind of things that a lot of us do with the ATEMs, I think that the recording with the ISO switcher is okay. And you get you get the ISOs there that are available. But I do agree with Guy. I mean, I record everything. We have we actually use the full-size hyperdecks because of the kind of stuff we record, and we need them racked and so on and so forth. And they're more stable than everything else that we've used. And so, there was a problem for a little while with the older hyperdecks of overheating because of the heat dissipation, and the newest ones have kind of fixed most of those things. We haven't had that problem, and we stack them pretty deep now. So that's been, what we've used for many years at this point. Next question.
Jeff Veely in Henderson, Nevada writes in, what is the best way to hang and stretch a Composite Components green screen without damaging the fabric?
Yeah, so I've only used Composite Components green screens probably for the last 25 years. So I think 1999 is when they sent Jonathan Erlin sent me a test kit to play with, and I've been sunk on them ever since. So the advantage of the Composite Components and it's digitalgreenscreen.com. They gave me the first set. That was like the first hit. I got addicted. I have bought thousands of dollars worth of green screens from them since then. The advantage of Composite Components is there's something about the green. Jonathan spent a lot of time working on it. He literally wrote some of the books, at least some of the chapters on green screen. I don't quite know what it is about the green that's different, because a lot of times it looks similar. And there's indoor versions, outdoor versions, and they're different colors, and they work better. They are significant. They also have paint, which I use a lot, and they are significantly better than Roscoe. Significantly, I mean, they just key way better than all the other Westcott and all the other ones that are out there. So if you're serious about green screen, everybody that I know that's serious about green screen is using Composite Components. I mean, in LA and up here and everything else. I don't know how long they're going to be around. I think that they're getting close to retiring if they haven't retired now. So this could be more challenging there. Now, the way that they should ship, they should have shipped with these little clips on it, and I believe that these are clips for leggings. I think that's all they are. They kind of push into the fabric, and they have little ropes. And then what you do is you build a frame that you're going to pull them up against. So here you can see that I have them about every 8 inches or so. Usually no more than every foot is kind of the rule of thumb for us, but 6 to 8 inches is kind of pretty normal for us. Let me get a different, let's see if I get a different color here. Let's see. I don't know why I'm having trouble with my colors today. Anyway, so basically you build this frame. Now, a lot of times this one's made out of PVC and it will bend a little bit, which is the problem with PVC. The advantage of PVC is that we can buy it all over the world without carrying it with us. So we put this in our pack, and then we show up somewhere in the world, and there's always somewhere to buy PVC or piping or so anyway, so that's the PVC here, and then we clip these onto and then we stretch them out. You want the PVC square to be about a foot bigger than the actual Lycra. So this is made out of Lycra. It's stretchy, and so you want it to be about a foot bigger so that you have some gap here because you're going to pull it and stretch it. You go down one side. Usually we then go around the other. You have to get the other side. You can pull these along after you've already put them up. Now, the big thing, it's hard for me I don't know how to show this, but we use a very specific way of putting these on, which is that we wrap over, and then we go across and in. And the reason we do that is that it's really quick for us to put it on, but more importantly, we can just tug on this and pull it right off. And so when we do breakdown, it takes like a second to just rip them all off. And so it's a circle over, and then we go under, and it will on itself, and it's very, very fast for us just to pull the knot up, and it will immediately release from the frame. Metal frames will work better. You can, if you get a grip truck, a lot of times there'll be a 10 by 10 foot frame, and that's what the 9 by 9 foot fits into. Well, so those it depends on what you have there. So that's how you do it. Now, once you've stretched it out, if you've carried it somewhere, it's going to be wrinkly. And the way to fix that is with a spray bottle. So just go to your local CVS, get a water bottle, fill it with water, and just spray it. And then you can come back in a couple hours, and it will be there'll be 0 wrinkles on it. And that doesn't work don't do that with cloth ones. It does not work that way. It's because it's Lycra, and the Lycra will release that. It will release all the wrinkles when it's wet. So a lot of times we try to do it in the morning, like we have an afternoon, or we try to get it all set up first thing, and then we spray it with water, and then we come back when we're ready to do it, and it's pretty awesome. So I would highly recommend it. All right, next question.
Jeffrey Flukiger in Elkhorn, Wisconsin writes in from the QR code, Alex, I just started using Keynote to build lower thirds. Life-changing. And since there's no question there, I've got to interject something. If you didn't see yesterday's demonstration, Alex, there was an awesome demo in Keynote about how to take Graphio and animate it in Keynote. It was beautiful.
What's Graphio?
Graphitopia. What's it?
It's
the animation. OmniGraph. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah. Craig Kadoki sent me
so
that.
good.
Yeah. Did he use line animations? Was that what he?
He did. Yeah.
Yes.
And he has a great way to align it, and it's just beautiful.
Oh yeah. He sent me that. Video. It looked amazing. But for lower thirds for Keynote. The thing to note is that there are a couple different ways of doing that. I'm not really set up to do any examples of it, but I'm glad, Jeffrey, that this is working for you. You can output it. What I do, this is how a lot of us started, is we used Keynote. We had everybody's names in Keynote. We would then just do a Luma key and just make sure that nothing in our lower third was below 15% black. So it is old. This is old broadcast rules. And if it went, it could be animated, it can flip out, it can do all kinds of other things. It just can't be too black. And then you use Luma key, and it can't have too much transparency, but you can have some. And so there's a whole lot of things that you can do in those areas there. And then the other thing to remember that a lot of people don't know is that if you're doing lower thirds and you're going to play them out from a system, you can actually, Keynote will save Apple ProRes 444 out, 4444, 4x4, out, so that you can do a ProRes rendering of your lower thirds and play them back. Now, we don't use Keynote anymore for most of our productions. For this kind of thing, SPX is what we use for this show. When I'm on shows, we're using everything from Viz to Expression to Chiron to lots of other tools that are doing it. But as you're getting started, if you're looking for something that lets you very quickly without a lot of if you haven't done a lot of these and you don't have a lot of money, it works pretty well. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I've been surprised at how far it's been able to take me in some shows as a lower third generator. And it's just such a simple, well thought out interface that it's really useful. And, it's one of the programs that starts me thinking about what I guess I kind of think of as off-label uses. And I try to look at all my programs now and think, what else can this do? And maybe I'll find something that it can do really well. Perfect example for me is that I do all my audiobook recording in Final Cut because it has a voiceover module. It is exactly the same code in Logic. I don't have to mess with the complexity of Logic, but I get things like keyword tagging of ranges or characters that allow me to do a whole bunch of other stuff with those characters, like gather them all together to see if I'm consistent through them. And I would have never thought of doing that in a video editing program. And that's kind of what I'm saying here is look at all the tools you use and ask yourself, is there something I need to do that I'm using this other tool for, maybe a specific tool that does that, but something I already have in my quiver will do that really well, and then I can eliminate the need for going back and forth between two programs because this one does both tasks.
One other thing that I do is that because I have my presentation on a separate computer and it feeds into my switcher, when I do presentations for folks, like some of the major presentations I do, I actually key the entire Keynote over top of me in the switcher. And then there are a handful of times when there are graphics just appearing in front of me that while I'm talking to someone about the presentation. So there's a bunch of full frame ones. We haven't, some of the testing that we worked on showed that picture-in-picture was not very effective when it came to reducing cognitive load. So basically, we didn't find that people watched longer if we put a pip in. People use pips. It's a very corporate thing to do. We didn't find that made a positive effect on view time, which is what we were measuring at the time. But we did find that compositing things over top of the person did. So this is research we did over a decade ago. It wasn't recent. So maybe it's changed. I don't know. But usually it doesn't. Those kind of things don't change. It's because you're talking about lower brain problems, which tend to change over thousands of years as opposed to tens of years. So what we found was that if you composited things around you and did stuff, it definitely was more engaging for folks to watch. If you put a pip into it with your graphic, it did not. And so we extrapolated that to it's better to do that kind of compositing, and we stopped using pips. so we cut back and forth between things. We don't use pips very much. We use them some, but we don't. We definitely it greatly reduced our usage of that because mostly what we found was people were aggravated; they couldn't read the screen. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, we all look to Apple and their presentations as kind of one piece of the state of the art of these kind of presentations. And I've been surprised in the last 3 or 4 years in the keynotes that they do. They've moved to occasionally using this idea of putting up a background slide that is very complex, something that I used to think, no, you never put up something really complex because you'll get them confused. But they'll do something like a flow chart of all the things that a particular new function will do. And they leave it up for 5 minutes or something like that. And I was wondering why, but then I realized that as I was watching, I was listening to the perfectly curated stream of information, but they were putting in little keys to me. Oh, like that little box down in the corner. Oh, that's exactly what I do. I need to know about that. They don't have to then talk about it in the presentation, but they let the audience interpret a more complex diagram at their own time and in their own pace, and they give it enough time so that the audience doesn't get overwhelmed by the horror of all sorts of bullet points trying to read through them and stuff like that. It's just an interesting thing I've seen Apple do lately, and I'm trying to incorporate a little of that in my stuff.
Apple's still state of the art when it comes to doing. If you want to do a product presentation, you can just watch what they're doing. I mean, you can't always afford to do what they're doing, but look at the things that they're doing because it's the gold standard. Next question.
Coming in from the QR code, Jason Robert Shaw in Sarasota, Florida writes in, set up a Zoom webinar and notice the option to let attendees upvote and comment in the Q&A settings. I haven't tried this. Have you? Does it work like Mukana? What if we could not only upvote and downvote in Mukana, but also comment on questions?
Hey, good guy.
Yeah, I set up a quick demo real quick to see how this works. So from an attendee point of view, this is what it would look like. You have Q&A, so I just typed in the word, how does this work? And here's the little thumbs up to upvote. So you'll see that there's a number 1 now. And if we hop over, so again, that's the attendee view that you're looking at here. Now if we hop over to source 3, this is the host view. So now on the host side, you see that in Q&A, you have guy asked this question, how does this work? There's a upvote. And you can see that there's a sorting here of most recent, and now you can say most upvotes. And that if you had a bunch of questions in there, you can sort that so that you can see which questions, just like Mukana, have the most upvotes. So that's how that would work.
Yeah, we've had it in Mukana in the past. so it's not that it hasn't existed. We found that incorporating, so we do it in a different way, which is that we did find that it was, what happened is that when you have a lot of commenting going on connected to the questions, the conversations it splinters the conversation. And we found that we made a decision that it didn't improve the overall experience of everyone watching to have lots of conversations start to splinter out because what happens is that we would see arguments, we would see back and forths, we would see a lot of stuff, and it meant that those questions lived for a long time in the consciousness of the audience. And so suddenly they were paying attention to 18 different things all at the same time, and it was splintering, and it was actually reducing the overall interaction with the audience because that unified plenary experience disappeared. So when it's at scale, in small numbers, which is most of what you probably see a lot of this Q&A stuff being used for. When I say small numbers, like less than 10,000 people, and definitely less than 1,000 people, it's probably okay. When you start getting to scale, what you end up with is this giant splinter that just kind of destroys the conversation, in my opinion. So that's why we don't have it. It's not that we can't have it. It's that I chose that in the past, after something in the past, realized that was, I'd rather, so what we do instead is that we have, we're merging the questions back in as we answer them into the chat inside of Mukana. And we do that so that there's a moment where we're all talking about that question, and then there's a moment when we're talking about the next question, and then there's a moment, and we're all in that conversation. And there may be a couple more posts, but the goal is actually to have it disappear. Like have it keep going up and moving away. There are some other techniques, but we're trying to keep everybody focused on this moment, and not like 6 other moments at the same time. And we felt that created a better experience. And so that's why we don't have it and probably wouldn't put it in anytime soon. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, just to complete this little show and tell, you can see the other options here are attendees can comment. So if you don't want them to comment and have all that madness, you can uncheck that or leave it unchecked. And then you can also not allow anonymous questions, and you can also allow them to view only the answered questions. So if you don't want them to see and vote on everything, they can only see the answered questions. And then there is a little refresh here. So unlike Mukana, where it's pretty real time, this you actually have to sit here and push this little button constantly to get it to refresh. So you got to be careful to get it to sort. So it looks like that they're trying. They might have copied somebody. They might have got an idea from somewhere and put this in.
Yeah, no, and so Q&As have been, a lot of people have used different Q&As, and admittedly, most Q&As are either they're driven or limited by the folks that founded it, and so definitely you can see the nature of how I think Zoom's doing it. Definitely, Mukana is driven by a lot of different event experiences that we've had over the last 15 years. But we definitely make some decisions, and there's some things that we just haven't that are technically difficult, but answering questions having comments connected to questions is not something we haven't done. It just didn't in a much earlier version, we found that it was splintering our conversation into a variety of different conversations, which, at different scales make sense or not make sense anyway, I could talk about that for an hour. Next question.
Ian Alford in London writes in, Alex has lots of Dell monitors running at 1080p, but what monitor does he use for viewing his edits, especially when looking at color? Well, Ian, you just asked him. So what do you think, Alex?
So I use all the monitors. So I split a lot of my edits. I'm opening pages on different, I'm splitting them up and using one to look at my, one to look at the program. I'm looking at ones to do the edit. The ones that I have that I look at the program are calibrated, with a spider. I don't have to do fine color because I have to get it close, and then I'm happy with it, and then I send it to somebody. So typically Charles to do it. So if I have to do hard, the final color is usually not done by me, and so I don't have a color accurate monitor, like a true color accurate monitor in my office. We do have color accurate monitors, and if I need to pull one in, I can set it down and really look at it. But in general, I have a calibrated monitor, which I find is good enough for most government work. And then if it's fine color, I'm sending it to somebody that is a professional at doing color correction, and that they are going to refine it. And either they're going to send me back the finished product, or they're going to send me back the derp file to do something with it. So that's how we kind of approach that. Next question.
Jack Cannon in Phoenix, Arizona writes in, trip to D.C. at the end of January. Does anyone have experience filming at Arlington and other monuments? Are permits a requirement, suggestions, or not necessary at all?
Okay, Bill.
I was interested in this, so I actually looked it up, and sure enough, there is a media policy on the Arlington National Cemetery Public Affairs Office website that you can get with a simple search. There are rules, and there are also things that are allowed. I would think that the key among all of them is to show immense respect and discretion, whatever you're doing there. There are a lot of people there who are mourning lost loved ones, so outside of that, they've got rules for you.
Yeah, I in general, for most of these, I've filmed at a fair number of, not Arlington, but I have to admit I just don't film it at cemeteries. Like it's just kind of one of those things that I have a tendency not to approach. But when you get outside of that and you go to the other monuments, there's a lot of people shooting with a lot of things. Where you get yourself more attention is a tripod. So typically in many cities and in definitely in monuments, and especially if you go into a space, like the Smithsonian, as soon as you put something on the ground, they're starting to pay attention to you. Oftentimes, if you have a simple monopod that doesn't look too like a Manfrotto monopod or whatever, I found that you can set that thing down and no one really thinks much of it. As soon as you open legs, everyone's paying attention to you, and people do it and people get away with it, and it's not that big of a deal. You see people all the time with tripods doing things, as long as they're little tripods. What I notice is if someone comes out with a ball head, and it's a beefier tripod, they'll almost immediately get attention from from folks that, and this is all over the world. So anyway, so I think that so if it's and Jack said that he is interviewing veterans on site there, that makes sense as part of a documentary. And so yeah, I would just go. Especially if you're interviewing veterans, that's going to be a very valid case. And I would look through the media policies. I would contact them, find out how you can. I think they'll actually support you. And what's best is when you're able to talk to them directly. Like we've shot at the Intrepid in New York and in Smithsonian and so on and so forth. If there's some way to partner with them, then you kind of have lots of access and lots of things to do if they think that it's a worthwhile process. So definitely don't be afraid to talk to them a little bit about it as well. Next question.
Francis Fry in Cambridge, Massachusetts wonders, with the QR code, I'm wondering if video in different locations can embed timecode well enough to then sync the files. Consider Ambient ACN-CL Lockit at each location and NanoLockit for each camera.
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, this is one of those things I would test. If you're talking about various remote crews keeping to the same time code, it can be a little problematic. And I've told this story before, but I've tried to just use, the sync that comes into my phone. And I did a couple of tests once when I was at NAB with asking people in the audience to just drop their hand when it hit 0 for them on their phones, and they were all over the place, which just tells me that the phone networks, that level, it does not exist. Now, there are GPS things that you can read satellites and things like that that might be more aligned and gen-locked, essentially. But I'm very careful about thinking that in different cities and different places that there is a timekeeper for everyone that is universal, that can be accessed without a lot of hassle. Maybe I just haven't run across that, but so far I have not had luck doing that.
There is a time code that works globally, and it's GPS. So these are GPS clocks. So we use these for a variety of other things to sync multiple locations live. So we need both clocks on both ends of a fiber connection in two parts of the United States to be locked together. And you can use GPS clocking to make that happen. Mickey said that the individual camera timecode generators would need to be jammed to a common master generator for multiple locations. This is often done with a master generators that can be synced with GPS clocks, as I said. Evertz and Horita are the most common ones in use. ESE also has GPS boxes. But yes, that's what you're looking for. If you truly want to do this, you're looking for GPS clocking. There are clocks out there that are designed to do that. What I'm curious as to the use case if of what you're trying to tie together. If they're overlapping use case, I mean, if you're trying to go from one thing to the next, then it'd be curious to know what you actually want to do there, because a lot of times for us, if we don't have clocks, we just use audio for that, and we send out an audio signal to everything that tells us where that is in the world. Obviously, you're going to have some delay if you're going through something like Zoom, so that may not work. So, but if you're trying to make that work, that's something to look at. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, as Alex implies, if you're looking at this to get a timecode base for post, almost all traditional professional cameras have had a series of settings in their timecode. You can do rec run. You can also do time of day. And that'll put a generic stripe of daytime if you sync your clock correctly and set your clock correctly. So multiple people shooting should have similar kinds of time on there. And then in the edit suite, if you're looking to do this for post, you'll be able to figure out, okay, there was a little offset. There was a 4-frame offset or something like that, and get those back in alignment. Almost every edit system I know will allow you to re-encode your time code with that kind of an offset, so that in post now, everything is truly synced. So if you're looking for post, that's a different game than if you're looking for a live thing and to make sure everything's recording exactly the same time code. That's a little tougher.
Yeah, and as Mickey pointed out, that the audio sync would, using audio to sync it would be bound to the latency of the audio transport. Absolutely. Next question.
Coming in from the QR code, Jason Robert Shaw in Sarasota, Florida, writes in that Rode announced a new wireless Go 3rd generation, now in colors. Is it a big deal?
Sorry, something popped up on my thing. So Rode, it looks interesting. So 32-bit float record, local records to the microphones. The microphones obviously have inputs. They have their own. They rebuilt the microphones as well as the preamps for those, so that they are slightly better. Within range. You can add a new TRRS connection for a microphone for the receiver. So if you want to record two people plus one more on the receiver, that's possible now too. So for what they are, I think that they are. I think that these Rodes look interesting. If you're a creator and you want a quick, easy way to plug in a 32-bit float record locally. There's a couple of them. Deity makes one as well. Rode, a couple of that are kind of in this world of being able to do that. So they look fine. I mean, I have I have Generation 1 Rodes. I think that in that frequency for live, I'm not that excited unless you're just doing cooking shows. We use them a lot for cooking shows. As long as they're in like 10 or 15 feet away, they work great. And sometimes they work at 50 feet. But a lot of times they start to break up at 20 feet. It's very, it is a lot of, a lot of their, all these mics are not that good for live, but not bad for creators recording stuff. I have to admit, I haven't bought into I'm going to clip a mic onto somebody, like I've clipped this box. The boxes are getting smaller. Rode's making them smaller. DJI's making them smaller. Everyone's making them smaller. This one actually isn't that much smaller, but clipping the box on or taping it to the end of a stick, as someone who's done this for a long time, is a little abhorrent. So we spend a lot of time trying to hide these things, but I get that it's what the kids do these days. So anyway, so you can give that a shot. A quick reminder, though, if you're watching the show and you want to ask questions and you don't want to log into Mukana or you don't want to do anything else, of course, you can go to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. There's a QR code for it, but you can just type in the URL as well, askofficehours.global, and ask your questions there, and you can do it 24/7. You saw one that Francis just posted even though Francis has access to Mukana, I'm sure it was easier to do it with with the QR code. So 24/7, askofficehours.global. Let's go ahead and go to the next question.
David Brady in New York writes in, Jojo Mayer has returned to Switzerland and is working on a generative music system. What future implications does generative tech have in the creative process? It gets deep at 2 minutes and 18 seconds, and he includes the link.
Go ahead, Bill.
These conversations are going to get very, very deep as this sweeps through all the creative industries and everybody tries to come to grips with this. I will just say, I woke up this morning and I was looking through general things. I don't know why it ended up in my feed, but in my feed today, I saw something where Jacob Collier, the young 20-something-year-old, most people consider him a musical jingo, and he was talking with Herbie Hancock and Quincy Jones. They were just in a private phone call, and they were relating what happened. And Jacob is playing, and suddenly Herbie would go, wait, what was that? What did you just do? And they all got into this deep in the week. He would talk about the chord and his chord choice, and they go, I've never heard that particular thing happen. Why did you do that? And he said, well, I was thinking that downstream there's going to be this change I want to make, and this will then resolve. And sure enough, you'd go back to Quincy or Herbie, and they go, how did you manage to take that weirdness and resolve it into something that was so beautiful? It was pure discussion among three brilliant long-term artists about pushing the art forward. It was just a joy to see this young man and these two lions of the industry talking about creativity. I'm not worried about, in the long run, any GPT system is going to replace that. It will make a lot of things better, but I don't think you can take real creativity at the level that those guys were expressing it and turn that into an algorithm, because he was doing everything wrong, but somehow making it right, where these two people who are at the same level of intelligence in artistic creation.
But I think, I just wanted to go back to Jojo Mayer. What he's doing is dancing with it. And I think that you're going to see a lot of artists that are excited. There's a lot of artists that are threatened by new technology, and that kind of comes out. But what you're really seeing him do is use the generative. He's building a generative music system where it's a dance between what he wants to do and how the generative is extending his ability to do that. And I think that that's going to be a really interesting. You're going to see a lot more of that. I find that it extends a lot of what I'm doing, whether it's programming or generating images or building those things out. I think that you're going to see some artists will push back on it, and a lot of artists are going to grab onto it and use it where they can. Next question.
Our own Liberty White and frequent panelist writes in from Atlanta, Georgia, OpenAI's Sora is still not available in the UK and Europe. They're still vetting the platform. Rightfully so. In the same breath, how will this impact people and businesses in those regions?
I think that Europe has a big challenge in the sense that they've taken on a very aggressive, both Europe and to some degree the UK, have taken on a very aggressive stance against a lot of these technologies, whether it's Apple's platforms or AI and who owns what, and they're trying to break everything up. They're trying to protect their own companies that like Spotify and everything else. And in all of that, they're creating a lot of delays, and time is a big deal when things are moving quickly. And I think that Europe definitely has the risk of falling behind because you're seeing Apple heavily delay some of the stuff that they're releasing until they understand exactly how it's going to fit into the legal framework. You have a lot of things getting vetted over very long periods of time. And because of that, and because they've decided that they're going to go down this path, they're going to, I think over time, they may end up just losing a lot of opportunities that are sucked up by companies that are in the front. So that without that innovation, they could just be left out of what's happening again, because of what they're doing. So I understand where the thought process comes, but it may come back to bite them. So it's just something to kind of pay attention to. By the way, if you enjoy office hours, there are a few ways that you can help us. Number one is make sure to subscribe and to like our channel. It helps us get more guests and build all those things up. You can also donate. You can go to office hours. .global/donate, and this is we're a nonprofit, and we're run by your donations or your purchases. Sometimes when we're buying things, and if you want to actually get involved, you can go to officehours.global/volunteer and fill out the form, and we'll get back to you and see if there's a place that you might want to help us move it forward. When you see this show every single day, there's nobody getting paid to do this. We're all showing up and putting our time in to help move this conversation forward. So those are a couple different ways that you can help Office Hours continue to do what we do. Next question.
Harshid Trivedi from Daytona Beach, Florida, and in the panel today writes in, can you describe a monopod a little bit, please? Appears it's a better choice over a tripod setup. Could something to mount to your chest be a decent option too?
All right, go ahead, Bill.
All those things are good things. Here's how I would describe them. Tripods are good for stability. It is the stable platform. And in executing one-dimensional moves like a pan or a tilt, the tripod is the correct stability base for that kind of thing. A monopod is basically one leg of a tripod taken off with a head mounted on top of it. So it has stability in the vertical axis. You can plant the foot on the ground, and now you can twist it left or right, not as stably as a tripod. You can also tilt it back and forward. You can also do some things you can't do with a tripod easily. I often flip my monopod upside down for low angle shots down at the ground, put the camera head reversed. I also can take that single tripod and hold it way up for an overhead shot, like if I'm at a parade or something, get over the entire crowd, and it's good for executing those kind of things. And of course, the rigs, like anything you'd wear with a Steadicam or a gimbal, has a different kind of thing. It just smooths out the motion on all axes. So I would describe them as being the difference between I'm hungry, do I want a Cuban sandwich, do I want an ice cream cone, or do I want something else? The answer is yes. At the right time, I want all of those things. I don't want to limit myself to one, and I would never argue that one is better than the other. It depends on what you're trying to get accomplished.
Yeah, I think that generally, if I want to walk away from the camera and have it continue to record stably, I want a tripod. Some of the monopods will do it. They've got pretty big feet, and they can stay there for a while, but it makes me nervous. So it's a very small base and a very long lever. So it's if you have a camera that you care about, you may not want to walk away from it. As far as stabilizing your shot and giving you a lot of fluidity, monopods are super powerful. When I'm traveling, a lot of times I'm not taking a tripod, I'm taking a monopod, and I've got that strapped to the outside of my my backpack. And I can just pull it off and very quickly. And I can do that with tripods as well, smaller tripods. But they provide a quick way to move from one place to the other. While you're opening up and trying to get your whole tripod working, you can have your monopod up and be shooting, as Bill said. So a lot of flexibility. And as Bill said, yes, both. So I think that you're oftentimes looking for all of those options. Next question.
Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois writes in, classroom use to eliminate USB-C to HDMI computer dongles. We are now using OH suggestion of a direct cable, a unilateral USB-C to HDMI.
It's a Uni.
Sorry, Uni, yeah, the name brand. Works great on computers, but does not work with newer iPad with USB-C input. But dongle does. Any idea why?
I'm going to have to go look at that. I have a bunch of those cables, and I have some of those converters. So I have those laying around. I'll have to go look at it. I don't remember it being a problem, but I will admit that the primary way that I share my iPad, with something is typically through an Apple TV. So the way that I'm typically sharing iPads or iPhones is that I have an Apple TV that's nearby, that's plugged into the switcher at desks for studios. We even put them right under the desk. We just put them. And so that's been our most common way of connecting. And so I realize I don't know how many times I've actually done that in the last couple of years. So I'll take a look at it. I thought I remember it just plugging right in, but I could be wrong. So we'll ask that in a couple of days. I'll try to do it after the show. Next question.
Aaron Hustlage in Durham, North Carolina writes in, I need to get an antenna up in the air about 20 feet. Does anyone have a recommendation for a tripod?
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I wouldn't use a tripod for that unless you need stability. If you're in a windy situation, then it's pretty hard to find them 20 feet tall. There are a couple of specialty manufacturers. Light stands, though, the kind of I used to have one, I'm trying to remember, I think it was 16 feet, 17 feet, and it was my go-to in a hotel ballroom when I had to get a microphone up to a speaker in the city as my ceiling as my third source of sound. So just look around, but I don't think necessarily tripods. Antennas are usually really light, so you don't need load bearing, you just need reach. And so look at the big light stand manufacturers and look for something maybe at B&H or one of those big companies that goes up that high.
Yeah, I would definitely take a look at James Haldane suggests an Avenger A100. But there's junior stands, combo stands. These are all things that you want to look at, and many of them will go that high. So that's probably the direction you want to go, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's pretty tricky to be able to do this with even a little bit of wind. Get a stake in the ground, get even like a cable or two. Just, it's not a bad idea.
I want to thank the panelists for being here today. We can't do this without you. It's a great conversation, as always. And thank you to everyone who asked questions today. We sent a couple of them back. Remember that if we send your question back, if you put it in the QR code, we'll bring it back another day. If you put it into Mukana, it's in your notes. You can always update them and then put them back in if you'd like to the next day. And so thank you for sending them all in. It's a real short show without your comments. I heard that yesterday was a little tight, but of course the producers made it happen and made sure that we had a conversation the whole hour. And thanks to the incredible team on the back end that develops all the tools, runs this show every single day, manages pieces in between the show. There's so many other things that are going on, whether it's the website or the email that goes out or many other things. And there's a lot of people working on this every single week. There's a lot of people putting their time in, volunteering their time to do that. And we really appreciate your contribution. Today, if we had done this in person and gone person to person here, the Tlaloc Traversal, we would have traveled 48,000 miles. That's 78,000 kilometers. And that is 382 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours.
We need like a little barbershop quartet, like bananas for scale.
I'm sure we could probably get an AI version of that pretty quickly, and then
it's
everyone will be upset.
For scale.
Grab your pearls.
The Mills Brothers. I can hear it in the Mills Brothers' voices.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Good
everybody.
show.
All right,
Thank you.
Thanks. See you guys.
Travel safely, Alex.
And thank you, Bill, for the explanation. Like I said, this is what I would think a monopod exists. Just the picture in my head, as a blind guy. So
yes.
Yeah. You really meant to discuss or to describe. It's a tripod with one leg. That's it.
right. Yeah. And that when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, okay, because I have this 12 South hover bar thing, but kind of picturing that same principle.
Basically, that with a spike on the bottom that drops all the way down to your feet. That's it.
Yeah, and usually they're collapsible. Most tripods have either flip locks or twist locks on the legs so that you can keep that nice and compact in terms of a vertical dimension. And then when you open them up, it comes out to being around 5 to 6 feet